Well, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. Well, today I'm excited to continue our Director Spotlight series, our Taste of Directors series here on the channel. This is a monthly series where we'll turn the spotlight on a director and we'll spend a few minutes talking about that director's background. We'll talk about their career and we'll talk about 3 to 4 films from her or his filmography to give you a taste of what that director has contributed to the world of cinema. Now, as I said before, choosing 3 to 4 films, that usually is not going to give you the full depth and breadth of what that director has done, especially if they've been doing this for multiple decades. If they've been producing and directing films for 30 or 40 years, 3 to 4 films is only going to be a small fraction of that director's output. But the idea here is to just give you a sampling of some of the director's most important works, or at least some of my favorite works from the director, just to give you a sampling and an idea of the types of films that they've done, so that if this is a director that you haven't discovered yet, could be an opportunity to discover a new director, new films that you haven't seen before. And for me, that's one of my favorite parts of doing this YouTube journey. My favorite parts of just studying film is discovery of new directors. And so for me, I am excited to talk about this director today because this is a highly influential director that I recently learned about a few years ago based on some releases from the Criterion Collection. This director is Ousmane Sembene, Senegalese director Ousmane Sembene. And he is a historically important director in that he was a pioneering trailblazer when it comes to telling African stories from Africans. And he is known as the father of African cinema. So Senegalese director, producer, and screenwriter Ousmane Sembene was born on New Year's Day, January 1st, 1923. January 1st, 1923 in Ziguinchor, Senegal. So this is Ziguinchor, Senegal. He was the son of a fisherman, and in 1938, while he was in his mid-teens, he moved to the capital city of Dakar, Senegal, and he worked a variety of manual jobs. Now, the thing to note about Ousmane Sembene is he started off as a writer. So he was a literary writer and he wrote all types of African stories. Eventually, he translated those African stories to the filmmaking art, but he started out writing early on in his career. And he wrote in French, so he taught himself how to read and write in the French language, and he drew on many of his life experiences for his first novel, which was named Le Docker Noir, The Black Docker, from 1956. And this was the story of Diawa, an African stevedore who faces racism and mistreatment on the docks of Marseille. So he was able to draw on his own experiences in his literary work. So Ousmane Sembene wrote a number of literary works in the 1950s until the early 1960s, where he started to study filmmaking at the Gorky Film Studio in Moscow. So this is a Soviet film studio in Moscow, and he learned under Soviet filmmaker Mark Donskoy. So I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, his background being from Senegal, taught himself the French language, and then studying filmmaking in the Soviet Union, which I think is very fascinating. So then he got into making films in the early 1960s, and the 4 films that I'm gonna focus on for purposes of this Taste of Directors series for Ousmane Sembene are 4 very fascinating films. And these are films that you might not have ever heard of before. I know for me, as of a couple of years ago, I had never heard of any of these films, but each of these films has something to say, and each of these films has historical importance, and I have really moved and impacted me in a major way. The 4 films are Boram Surret from 1963, which is a short film. This is his first film. Black Girl, 1966. This is Ousmane Sembene's feature debut. Black Girl, this is in the Criterion Collection at Spine 852. Mandabi from 1968. This is Spine number 1065 in the Criterion Collection. And Moulade, which was Ousmane Sembene's last film before he passed away. This is from 2004. And Moulade means magical protection. And this is a film that takes on a very serious subject matter that I'll get to in a moment. So these are the 4 films that I want to talk about in this Taste of Directors series. All right, so the first film, Boram Surret from 1963, is Ousmane Sembene's filmmaking debut. It is not a feature-length film. It's only 18 minutes, but it's a very powerful story packed into that short runtime. And it's the story of a wagoneer, a guy that drives a wagon in the streets of Senegal, and he gives people rides throughout the poorer areas of the streets of Senegal. And during those riding episodes, so he deals with like 3 to 4 people over that 18-minute period, and you get to see or hear his internal thought process, what he's thinking about, his own narration of the events that are going on in his life and the interactions with the people that he's giving rides to and their motivations. You learn a lot about life and a lot about people in that short runtime, whether it's the husband and wife that he's rushing to the hospital, or whether it is a man who has a stillborn baby, taking that man to the cemetery to bury his child, or whether it be a businessman who wants the wagoneer to take him into the main city area where wagoneers are not allowed to go into. What are his motives? What is he after? And just learning about the motivations of people, the way that people mistreat people, so much about human interactions and the way that human beings treat each other is a large part of the themes of Baram Saret, as well as one of the themes that runs common through a lot of Ousmane Sembene's works, and that is post-colonialism and the impacts of post-colonialism on the people who continue to live in Senegal during this time. So it's a very fascinating 18-minute short watch that I highly recommend you check out. I saw it on YouTube, so definitely check out Baram Saret from 1963. All right, so the second film that I'll talk about in this Taste of Ousmane Sembene films is a film that was released by the Criterion Collection. It is the 1966 film, and it is his feature film debut. It comes in at just under an hour at 59 minutes, and it's Black Girl. This is the 1966 feature film debut from Ousmane Sembene, and it is a very fascinating story about a young lady who lived in Dakar, moved to France in search of a better life. She goes to work for a couple, encounters abuse, and it's just a fascinating story that just teaches you a lot about the environment in Senegal, Africa at that time, and just this whole post-colonial world that Ousmane Sembene liked to write about and tell stories about. This is just a very eye-opening, fascinating film that I actually need to revisit. It's been a few years since I've seen this film, but it's an absolutely wonderful film from Ousmane Sembene. I'll take a moment to read the back here of the Criterion case. Ousmane Sembene was one of the greatest and most groundbreaking filmmakers who ever lived, as well as the most renowned African director of the 20th century, and yet his name still deserves to be better known in the rest of the world. This is a director that I only discovered a few years ago thanks to the Criterion Collection. He made his feature debut in 1966 with the brilliant and stirring Black Girl. Sembene, who was also an acclaimed novelist in his native Senegal, transforms a deceptively simple plot about a young Senegalese woman who moves to France to work for a wealthy white family and finds that life in their small apartment becomes a prison, both figuratively and literally, into a complexly layered critique of the lingering colonialist mindset of a supposedly post-colonial world. So featuring a moving central performance by Mbessine Therese Diop, the beautiful lady pictured here, just fantastic. Black Girl is a harrowing human drama as well as a radical political statement in one of the essential films of the 1960s. So I will open this, and on the inside, you see this insert and the wonderful disc art. And when you take out the disc and you take out the insert, check this out. You'll see where she came from in Senegal. So it shows footage in Senegal, and it shows footage, of course, in France. And this is, of course, the front and the back of the case. Just fantastic. Fantastic. This is an amazing film from Ousmane Sembene, and it's his feature film debut. And it's a very brisk watch coming in at 59 minutes at under an hour. So I highly recommend this work. It is a historically important film. It was my first exposure to Ousmane Sembene, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's part of a new 4K digital restoration. If you're still thinking about films to pick up for the Criterion Collection sale, I believe this video is going up in the final weekend of the sale. So if you happen to be watching this video and there's still time in the Criterion sale and you're still thinking about some films to pick up and you're looking for something that maybe something you've never heard of before that's historically important, something new that would give you a glimpse into a new area of the world that you may not be familiar with, check out Black Girl from Ousmane Sembene. Very highly recommended. Spy number 852 in the Criterion Collection. So the next film that I'll talk about, the third film I'll talk about, is another entry from Criterion of an Ousmane Sembene film. So I love that Criterion has been expanding its tent for new filmmakers, and Ousmane Sembene is a great addition to the wonderful catalog that is the Criterion Collection. And this is Spy number 1065. It came out, I believe, last year. I did a review of Mandabi on the channel from last year, so definitely check out my review of Mandabi. Mandabi is the money order. This is an amazing film of Ousmane Sembene. It's from 1968. This is his second film. This film is historically important because it's his second feature film. It comes in at 91 minutes. What's really important about this film to think about is the fact that this is the first film filmed in an African language. It is filmed in Wolof. So it is the first film ever made in an African language, a major step toward the realization of the trailblazing Senegalese filmmaker's dream of creating a cinema by, about, and for the inhabitants of his home continent. So after jobless Ibrahima Dieng receives a money order for 25,000 francs from a nephew who works in Paris, news of this great windfall spreads among the people in the town that he's in. People start wanting to get loans from him. He's going about the process of trying to figure out how to get this money order cashed, and he runs into a lot of bureaucratic red tape. So that's the story of Mandabi, is the adventures or misadventures of this man, Ibrahima, who comes into a money order for $25,000 from his nephew, and going about the process of trying to get this money and trying to, avoid and stiff arm the people along the way who are trying to take the money from him. So that is the story of Mandabi, and it is a fascinating tale from 1968 from Ousmane Sembene that I highly recommend, the father of African cinema. Check out the art on here. There is an article on the Criterion website that talks about the making of this art that I highly recommend you check out. Very fascinating. But look on the inside, the beautiful artwork of this amazing film. And what is really fascinating about this, of course, you see the nice artwork there on the disc and this pattern here, very, very beautiful. But what's really cool about this is you get the standard, insert here with the essay that you get in most Criterion releases these days, which is very nice essay included in here, by the way. But you also get this, check this out. This is Ousmane Sembene. Of course, he was a writer, as I said, did a lot of literary works in the 1950s, and this is one of them. This is the novella upon which the film is based, written by Ousmane Sembene. It's his novella, The Money Order by Ousmane Sembene. So he wrote the novella upon which this film is based, and that is actually included in this release from the Criterion Collection. So Mandabi is a fantastic release. That's the front and the back of the case right there, which is just phenomenal. Beautiful artwork on Mandabi, but I highly, highly recommend you check out Mandabi from Ousmane Sembene. Great work from the father of African cinema. So again, if the Criterion sale is still going on, if you're watching this at the end of July, or maybe you're watching this in November, during the November sale, whatever time you're watching this, whether a flash sale is going on or what have you, or if you just want to go ahead and get these titles, you want to immerse yourself into the world of Ousmane Sembene and discover what is this director all about, check out these two films, Black Girl and Mandabi. They're available from the Criterion Collection, both in excellent editions. These are two 4K digital restorations of his films from 1966 and 1968. Highly recommended. great introduction to the father of African cinema, Ousmane Sembene. Now, the last film that I'll talk about briefly here is a film from 2004 that is a pretty deep film, and it's called Moulade. And it is Ousmane Sembene's last film, and it is called Moulade from 2004. Moulade means magical protection. And this film deals with a very serious subject matter, and I don't believe it's available on physical media, but this film is a film that is based in Africa, and it deals with a very serious subject matter. And that subject matter is, this is a village where they do the practice, and this is a humanitarian issue, where they do the practice of genital mutilation. And it is a very, very sad human story of a woman who takes 6 girls and hides them away and tries to protect them from this horrible procedure that they do when girls reach a certain age in this particular village of Africa. And so Ousmane Sembene tackles a very serious humanitarian subject in his last film, Moulade, or Magical Protection. So this woman, she takes these girls and hides them away and basically casts a spell upon them to give them protection away from this controversial procedure that this village has been doing for multiple generations. And it's just a very powerful, impactful story that covers a very serious humanitarian issue that has gone on in certain areas of the world. Ousmane Sembene brings this to our attention in his last film, Moulade, or Magical Protection. So I highly recommend that you check that out. I don't believe it's available on physical media anywhere, but it is available on streaming. I actually saw it on YouTube. So very disturbing subject matter, but Ousmane Sembene was the type of filmmaker and writer that dealt with serious matters of post-colonialism, different issues that are at play in Africa during the time of his life, and that to some extent still persist to this day. And he did not shy away from some of the more serious issues as well. So definitely admire Ousmane Sembene for tackling that particular area. So those are the 4 films I wanted to cover in this Taste Director series for Ousmane Sembene. His works are so highly influential. Of course, I have up here Visions of 8, and you may be wondering, why do I have Visions of 8 up here? Well, part of the reason why I have it up here is because Visions of 8 is one of my favorite releases from 2021, last year, but also Ousmane Sembene features in this particular edition from the Criterion Collection. So there is a 54-minute documentary on this edition here. Visions of 8 deals with the Munich 1972 games. And there were 8 filmmakers that were featured in Visions of 8. And it's a phenomenal documentary from the Criterion Collection. Each of these 8 directors got to shoot different aspects of the Olympic Games in Munich in 1972. This Visions of 8 film almost became Visions of 9 because one of the directors that was looked at to do a feature of the Munich Games was Ousmane Sembene. And Ousmane Sembene shot footage of a portion of the 1972 Munich Games, but for whatever reason, they chose not to include Ousmane Sembene's contribution in this film. So if they had have included it, it might have been Visions of 9, but instead it's Visions of 8. But in this 54-minute documentary, it features Ousmane Sembene biographer Samba Gajijo. And he talks a little bit about Ousmane Sembene's, time in Munich and the work that he was putting together. And they sort of touch on Ousmane Sembene's contribution to this work, although, it never was fully realized in the final product. So that's why I got Visions of 8 up here, because there's a connection to Ousmane Sembene in this amazing edition. This is another highly recommended edition if you're interested in documentaries, if you like the Olympics. This is a great one. I love the way this film is shot. It gives you a vision of the 1972 Munich Games through the eyes and lens of 8 different directors, and each director brings their own touch to the 1972 Games. The only thing that I wonder about it is I wonder if there's any way they could somehow recover Ousmane Sembene's footage, because that would be an amazing thing to see. I'm pretty sure he put together a pretty interesting view from his perspective of the 1972 games. Maybe someday we will see that. So yeah, that's why I've got Visions of 8 up here, because there's a connection to Ousmane Sembene. But yeah, Ousmane Sembene is a director that I'm very happy to have discovered as part of my exploration of Criterion Collection films. And he's just one of many directors that I have discovered through the years. And he is the father of African cinema, and I'm looking forward to learning more about his works. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think about the films of Ousmane Sembene? Have you ever watched any films from this great director? If so, what are some of your favorite films from Ousmane Sembene? And also let me know what titles from the Criterion Collection have you picked up as part of this epic July sale. This video, you may be watching it after the sale, but whatever time you're watching it, what are some of the favorite films that you've picked up from the sale? Have you picked up any of the Ousmane Sembene films? Have you picked up Visions of 8, this amazing edition from the Criterion Collection? What films have you picked up as part of this epic sale, and what titles are you looking forward to picking up in the remainder of the year? Let me know all that goodness in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.